Long before this land was named Iran, it was a violent collision of continents. The Zagros and Alborz ranges are the scars of that collision, a monumental upheaval of the Earth's crust that created a landscape of extreme verticality. These mountains are not simply features within the country. They are the country's creators. They dictate where the rain will fall, where the rivers will flow, and where life is possible. To live in their shadow is to exist in a permanent state of negotiation with stone and gradient, with ice and gravity. This is the story of that negotiation. It is an exploration of how this immense geological pressure has forged a unique human existence, a culture that has learned not to challenge the mountain, but to listen to it, to read its moods, and to build a life within its powerful and often perilous embrace. These are not empty spaces. They are not obstacles to be crossed on the way to somewhere else. For the people who inhabit them, they are the destination, the entire world, a complete universe of meaning and survival. Here, in the high altitudes, in the thin, clean air where the sky feels closer and the silence is a palpable presence, geology and human life have fused over centuries into something inseparable. Something elemental. This is a world where the mountain is not just a feature of the landscape, but the organizing principle of existence itself. The foundation of the house, the source of the water, the spirit in the sky, the very texture of daily life. It is a world where survival is not a battle against nature, a violent conquest of the land, but a long, patient, and deeply intelligent negotiation with it. A conversation carried on not in words, but in the placement of stones, the planting of seeds, and the rhythm of footsteps on a steep path. This is a story of a life built not on the earth, but within it, a life shaped by the immense, quiet, and unyielding logic of the mountain. It is a testament to the human capacity to find a home not in the easy places, but in the grand, challenging landscapes that demand resilience and in return offer a unique and profound sense of belonging. In the volcanic foothills of Mount Sahand, the earth itself offers the blueprint for settlement. This is not a landscape that was tamed or altered for human convenience. It was accepted, understood, and inhabited on its own terms. Thousands of years of eruption and erosion have left behind a forest of conical rock formations, pillars of hardened ash and lava known as tuff. Here, in the village of Kandovan, human settlement did not begin with a foundation. It did not level the ground to build upon it. It burrowed within it, seeking shelter in the very heart of the geology. The house is not an object placed in the landscape. It is a chamber carved from the landscape itself. A negative space created within the positive mass of the mountain's ancient leavings. The act of creating a home here is an act of subtraction, not addition, a hollowing out of a space for life within a solid that has stood for eons. To live here is to be enveloped by the earth, to sleep within a stone that still holds the memory of fire. The security it offers is primal, womb-like, a return to a fundamental state of shelter that modern architecture, with its thin walls and separation from the elements, can never replicate. Each dwelling is a testament to a form of engineering that predates blueprints and machinery. The walls, nearly 6 feet thick, are the mountain itself, a mass of volcanic tuff that provides a thermal stability modern construction struggles to match. They are cool in the crushing heat of the high-altitude summer and retain the precious warmth of the hearth through the deep, penetrating cold of winter. This is not architecture as design, but architecture as geological symbiosis. The sound within these chambers is muted, the outside world softened, the silence profound, broken only by the sounds of life within the stone. The accumulated layered record of every meal cooked, every story told, every child born, every generation that has drawn its warmth and sustenance from this exact spot of stone. Life here is a quiet conversation with deep time, lived inside the remnants of a volcanic event that occurred long before human memory began. A daily existence that reaffirms a connection, not just to family and community, but to the very geological processes that shaped the planet. Further north, where the Alborz Range rises like a great wall to trap the humid air of the Caspian Sea, the fundamental challenge is not heat, but gradient. The very concept of flat, stable ground is a luxury this landscape does not afford. The village of Masuleh is built on a slope so extreme that conventional architecture, with its separate streets and private plots, becomes a physical and social impossibility. The solution that emerged organically over 1,000 years of continuous habitation is a radical and beautiful reimagining of public and private space. The entire settlement rises in receding tiers, a vertical accumulation of homes where the structural logic is one of absolute, unavoidable interdependence. The fog, a near-constant presence, drifts through the village like a slow-moving river, isolating houses from one another in a veil of white, only to reveal them again, moments later. A constant play of concealment and connection that defines the visual and social atmosphere of the place. Here, the roof of one house is the courtyard of the house above it. The public street is simultaneously a private ceiling. There are no roads wide enough for vehicles, only interconnected pathways that are also the structural surfaces of people's homes. This extraordinary arrangement is not governed by a written agreement or a municipal code. It is a social contract made physically manifest in clay, stone, and wood. It is the physical expression of a deep, unspoken understanding that where the environment applies such constant and unforgiving pressure, the individual household is not the primary unit of survival. The well-being of your neighbor is not an abstract concept, it is a structural necessity. The integrity of their roof is the stability of your path. The sounds of their life, a crying baby, a simmering pot, a quiet argument, travel through the shared structures, making privacy a relative concept and community an inescapable reality. Only the connected whole, stacked one upon the other, leaning on one another, is resilient enough to hold its place on the mountain. In the Zagros Range, along the border with Iraqi Kurdistan, the same principle of adaptation to a vertical world takes yet another form. In villages like Uramanat Village, the architecture does not burrow into the rock, nor does it stack upon it in defiance of gravity. It mirrors it, becoming an extension of the geology itself. The houses are built from the same dry stacked limestone as the canyon walls, assembled without mortar, a technique that allows the structures to move and settle with the earth rather than resist it and break. The walnut wood beams that support the ceilings are not just structural, they are a flexible skeleton within the stone body, designed to absorb the tremors of a seismically active region. From the valley floor, the settlement appears not as a human construction imposed upon the landscape, but as a natural feature of it, a complex crystallization on the face of the mountain, a throne carved into its flank. Daily life moves vertically, along steep, stepped pathways that connect every household. Every trip to the spring, every visit to a neighbor, every return from the fields is a physical exertion, a constant, lifelong negotiation with altitude that shapes the body, strengthens the legs, deepens the breath, and sets the rhythm of the day. A rhythm dictated not by the clock, but by the sun's slow journey across the narrow strip of sky visible from the canyon floor. But not all life in these mountains is fixed in stone. For others, the mountain is not a place to build a permanent home, but a path to be traveled, a series of challenges to be met and overcome. For the nomadic tribes of the Zagros, the landscape is defined not by stability, but by motion, by the ancient seasonal rhythm of migration known as kutch. This is not a journey with a simple beginning and a final end. It is a continuous, unbroken cycle, a pendulum swing of life dictated by the seasons, a relentless movement between the Gamsia, the warm winter grazing lands in the lowlands, and the Sardsia, the cool summer pastures high in the mountains. It is a way of life that is itself a force of nature, as predictable and as essential as the changing of the seasons. The air is filled with the dust of thousands of hooves, the smell of lanolin and wild thyme crushed underfoot, a sensory world that is constantly in motion. Their existence is governed by a different calendar, one written not in months and days, but in the availability of grass, the depth of the snow, and the birthing cycles of their animals. Every mountain pass is a gateway, a test of endurance. Every river crossing is a test of nerve and knowledge passed down through countless generations. Their wealth is not in land, which they do not own, but in livestock, their capital on the hoof. Their home is not a static structure, but a portable territory, a temporary island of community defined by the presence of the clan and the circle of their black tents. This memory is not a collection of facts, but an embodied wisdom, the ability to read the weather in the shape of the clouds, to know the location of a hidden spring from the color of the rock, to sense the coming of a storm in the feel of the wind. It is a knowledge that cannot be written down, only lived. While the villager is tied to a place, the nomad is tied to a path, a sacred geography of movement. Both are equally profound connections to the land, two different answers to the same fundamental question of how to live in a world of such immense scale and power. The immense geological permanence of the mountains stands in stark and beautiful contrast to the transient, fleeting nature of the nomadic camp. A home that is here today will be gone tomorrow, leaving behind only the flattened grass and the cold ashes of a fire. Yet the connection to the land is just as deep, if not deeper, than that of the settled villager. The migration routes are not arbitrary. They are ancient corridors of survival, pathways of life etched into the collective consciousness of the tribe, a sacred geography known by heart. To be a nomad here is to understand the mountain not as a static object to be viewed, but as a living, breathing system of weather, water, and vegetation, a complex system that must be read with precision and respect for life to continue. It is an existence that embodies the most fundamental human story, the search for sustenance and meaning in a world that offers both breathtaking beauty and unforgiving hardship in equal, inseparable measure. Where the mountains create barriers, they also create pockets of deep time, isolated sanctuaries where ancient ways of life, sheltered from the homogenizing forces of the outside world, have been allowed to persist with extraordinary consistency. Nearly 7,200 feet up in the Carcass Range, the village of Abyaneh is defined by a single, dominant geological fact: the high concentration of iron oxide in the local soil. The village is not just built on this earth, it is built from it. Its mud brick walls the exact color of the surrounding rock, making it almost disappear into the landscape from a distance. This material possesses a counterintuitive and miraculous property. It hardens with rain rather than eroding, meaning every storm that has passed through this valley over centuries has only reinforced the walls that shelter its people, a gift from the very climate that makes life here so challenging. This profound physical isolation has fostered a parallel cultural one. The dialect spoken here is a form of Middle Persian, a linguistic fossil that has all but vanished from the rest of the country. The traditional dress is worn not for festivals or tourists, but as the daily uniform of village life, a deliberate and proud visual refusal of the black chador common elsewhere. The architecture itself encodes a social order that has remained largely unchanged for centuries. The dual knockers on a single door are not a quaint decoration. They are a functioning technology of social separation, a physical manifestation of deeply ingrained customs of gender and hospitality, a social code preserved in wood and iron. This is a community designed not in reaction to the outside world, but in deliberate, quiet separation from it. Survival here was always contingent on an absolute self-sufficiency, on a complete and intimate knowledge of what this specific altitude and this specific soil could provide. The rooftops become a second, open-air kitchen in the summer, a vibrant patchwork of drying fruit that will sustain the village through the long, snow-bound winter, a testament to a philosophy of patience, planning, and foresight born from the harsh necessities of mountain life. Life is also lived in the shadow of giants. Near the great volcanic peaks of Damavand and Sabalan, the mountains transcend mere geology and enter the realm of the sacred, the mythological. They are not just sources of water from high-altitude springs or providers of summer pasture for flocks. They are presences powerful points of orientation in both the physical and the spiritual landscape. Damavand, in particular, is more than a mountain. It is a central character in the national epic, the Shahnameh, the place where the heroic archer Arash fired the arrow that defined the nation's borders. It is a source of national pride and identity, a constant, unchanging landmark in a region of constant historical change. For the communities at their base, the mountain is a source of myth, a place of pilgrimage, a silent, eternal observer of the fleeting generations that unfold below. This relationship with the land is not one of extraction or utility, but of reverence, a deeply held understanding that the most powerful forces in the world are those that cannot be controlled, only coexisted with, and that to live in their presence is both a challenge and a privilege. Seven settlements, 7 geographies, 7 peoples, separated by altitude, by language, by the very stone beneath their feet. Yet beneath all the visible differences, a single, unifying logic repeats itself with the consistency of a natural law. In none of these places did human life attempt to conquer the landscape it occupied. No hillsides were leveled, no canyons rerouted, no rigid geometric grid imposed upon ground that refused to be flat. The architecture did not shape the land shaped the architecture, and the people, through a wisdom accumulated over millennia, accepted those terms without negotiation. This is not a story of human dominance over nature, a narrative that has become so common in the modern world. It is a story of human accommodation with it, a story of humility, ingenuity, and grace, a long and quiet epic of adaptation. What has persisted here is not the result of favorable circumstance or abundant resources, but of a long, inherited familiarity with impermanence and pressure. It is the accumulated understanding that the most appropriate response to an unstable and challenging world is not to demand that it stabilize, not to fight against its fundamental nature, but to learn, across generations, the precise and subtle art of living well within it. As the modern world increasingly confronts a future defined by climate instability, resource scarcity, and social fragmentation, these remote mountain communities no longer look like relics of a distant, irrelevant past. They begin to feel like early chapters of a story the rest of the world is only now, with great difficulty, beginning to learn. They are a quiet but powerful testament that the most resilient civilizations are not always the ones that build the highest walls or the most powerful engines. They are the ones that learn to listen most closely to the earth, to understand its materials, to respect its forces, and to build their lives in harmony with its oldest, most powerful, and most enduring rhythms. They are a form of wisdom the world has largely forgotten, a wisdom it may desperately need to remember.